Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He wants to invade Syria. As if one invasion was not enough, Erdogan is talking about another one. He wants to create a buffer zone in Syria's north, around 30 kilometers wide. And to do this, he's planning a military incursion. The dates have not been finalized yet, but Erdogan says it could be a sudden attack. Now, why does Erdogan need a buffer zone? For two reasons. A, to drive Kurdish fighters away from Turkey's border, specifically the YPG fighters. The YPG is a key ally of the United States in Syria, but Turkey calls them terrorists, so they want to drive them away. And the second reason is to resettle Syrian refugees. Turkey is currently hosting 3.7 million Syrians. Erdogan's plan is to send them back to this buffer zone, 30 kilometers wide. So that answers the question, why? Next question, why now? For starters, Russia is busy in Ukraine, so chances are Putin cannot spare much for the fight in Syria. Another reason is Erdogan's leverage over the West. I'm talking about NATO's expansion plans. NATO wants to admit Finland and Sweden. But Erdogan is holding up both these memberships. Only he can speed up NATO's expansion, and in return, he could ask for anything, funds, military assistance, or in this case, a green light for the Syrian operation, whatever he wants. Having said that, there will be a backlash, we know. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the move will undermine regional stability.
The concern that we have is that any new offensive would undermine regional stability, such as it is, provide malign actors with opportunities to exploit instability for their own purpose. We continue effectively to take the fight through partners to Daesh, to ISIS within Syria, and we don't want to see anything that jeopardizes the efforts that are made to continue to keep ISIS in the box that we put it in.
Russia too is warning Turkey. Here's what their foreign ministry said, and I'm quoting, "We hope that Ankara will refrain from actions that could lead to a dangerous deterioration of the already difficult situation in Syria." Russia is advising against escalation. So both America and Russia are warning Turkey. Neither of them want the operation to go ahead. But will it be enough to deter Erdogan? Let's look at the past. Since 2016, Turkey has launched 3 operations into northern Syria. Each time they fought the Kurdish fighters. And each time they got more territory. So there's no reason to think that Erdogan is bluffing. In fact, this time he has more reasons to attack. 2023 is election year in Turkey. The economy certainly will not get Erdogan re-elected. Maybe a military operation will. Nationalist voters in Turkey generally support attacks against the Kurds. Also this time, he has insurance. Both NATO and Russia are keen to please him. Just look at the events of today. America's ambassador to the United Nations was in Turkey. Next week, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will be visiting. The question is, where does this end? Let's assume Turkey does invade Syria. That would pit Russia and Turkey against each other. Every time that happens, there is chaos. And I have examples. 2015, a Russian warplane was shot down by Turkish jets. Ankara claimed the aircraft was flying close to their borders. 2020, Russia and Syria carried out an airstrike in Idlib. More than 30 Turkish soldiers were killed. So Turkey and Russia have a history of fighting in Syria. But here's a new question now. Will NATO get involved this time? They're doing so much for Ukraine after all, which is not even a NATO member. Turkey is. So technically, NATO should be lining up to help Turkey. Why haven't they? Because of 2 reasons. Number one, Article 5 of NATO covers attacks inside NATO territory. But so far, all attacks have been outside Turkey, in Syria, which is not NATO territory. So collective defense was never activated. Reason number 2, the Kurdish groups are key allies of the West. So the United States never approved of Turkey's operations. But this time that could change. If NATO is serious about admitting Sweden and Finland, they need Erdogan on board.
And he wall during the current Senate negotiations and is headed to the beach in Delaware tonight. The White House getting grilled on how the president plans to press ahead.
If the president thinks that Congress must act immediately to end this epidemic of gun violence, is he going to bring any of the key players from Capitol Hill to the beach with him tonight?
Oh, okay. So I don't have.
That's a big part of candidate Biden's whole thing, that he knows how to get things done.
He does. He does. I mean, he's beaten the gun lobby before.
Meanwhile, fireworks on Capitol Hill as House Democrats clashed with Republicans on new gun legislation being pushed by the left.
There's something gun-crazed about our country that we need to deal with.
You are not going to bully your way into stripping Americans of fundamental rights.
If the Supreme Court objects, we will expand it, and we will not rest until we have taken weapons of war out of circulation.
They want to change the country in so many dramatic ways.
Again, Texas is filled with good guys with guns, but that couldn't save the lives of those 19 children and 2 teachers.
So this gun would be banned.
I hope the gun is not loaded.
I'm at my house. I can do whatever I want.
To my Republican colleagues, I ask, who are you here for? Are you here for our kids, or are you here for the killers?
Oof, that was a low blow. As if Republicans who believe in the Second Amendment, Jesse, side with the killers of children. That's when it gets ridiculous.
Yeah, he's a nasty guy. I just don't care what he says. Biden has 3 things he needs to address tonight. There's 3 components. There's school shootings, there are mass shootings, and then there are these inner city gun homicides. If he just goes in and only addresses AR-15s, the whole country's going to dismiss that. We are, because this is a larger issue. And if you look at it statistically, most of the homicides are handgun homicides by drum gangs in the inner city. He needs to say that, and he needs to take a holistic approach. Greg likes to talk about variables. You can even address all 3 of these components if he likes to do the root cause thing. I know how much they love root causes. You go into mental health, you go into broken families, you go to the toxic internet culture, red flags. There's a lot of things you can put out on the table, and we expect the President of the United States to do that. He needs to come with concrete proposals tonight that can actually get traction in the Senate, because right now the Senate's cut him out of the negotiation. If he comes in and just poison pills this thing and says Republicans want everyone to die, I'm going to take your guns, no. Right now the main action in the Senate is Lindsey Graham and Cornyn, 2 deputies of the minority leader, Mitch McConnell, and it's basically red flag laws. If they can get action on red flag laws and get momentum on hardening schools, take the win, Mr. President. Don't just kill it because you're really so dug in on the left that you have to go take our guns. Take the win on that little issue, and the American people will actually say, you know what? You did something. Everyone says, do something, do something. That would be something.
Don't you think, Jessica, that it really is kind of amazing that, as Greg has been saying for weeks now, the president has like a one-faceted approach. We've got to take the guns. You have a baby now. I would assume that you would want schools hardened. You would want to know about, you'd want red flag laws to be in place so that when someone shows all of the signs that when we look back, we see all the crumbs that kind of led up to this, that there's got to be more than just let's get rid of basically the Second Amendment.
It has to be a multivariable approach for sure, but in terms of hardening schools, some of the things that I've heard that go into hardening schools, like teachers being armed, no, I don't want that. And I want the very best for my child.
But hardening a school, forget about teachers being armed.
But that's a big part of what people have been talking about.
Let's say we take that out. But do you believe in hardening a school?
I believe in increased security, and so does Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut, who has an op-ed up on foxnews.com that everyone should check out about the progress that he's making in bipartisan talks. And Chris Murphy puts out there that the Democrats are open to increased mental health provisions, anything in red flag laws, increased security, as well as expanding background checks, not even the full Monty of what they've wanted, but the tiniest incremental move towards making society safer. And that's what everyone that we've been talking about all week at this table. And that's what Chris Murphy is putting out there. And you know that if there's someone, the guy who represents those Sandy Hook families, is putting it out there, that that's something that Democrats are open to. And I think that's a very good sign. But no teachers with guns. That is not their job.
Okay, all right. But the point is, there is a chance to negotiate, Katie. We have a president who's on his way to the beach. Yesterday, he's talking about handguns.
Yeah. I'll preface this conversation by saying I do some social media work with full courts and firearms in my personal capacity on my social media pages. That being said, the press secretary was asked today why the president is giving this address tonight from the White House in prime time. She said it was because he wants his voice to be out there on this issue, which says to me he's not going to offer much new. So let me talk about what I think he's going to say tonight and to put some facts on the table before he says these things. He's going to call for an assault weapons ban without defining what an assault weapon is. If we're going to talk about semi-automatic rifles, that's something we can talk about. But the facts are, according to the National Institute of Justice, which is a Department of Justice outlet, 77% of mass shootings are committed with handguns. So if we're going to talk about things that actually work, we need to talk about, not just politicians saying that we need to do something for the sake of doing it, which is very dishonest. I think the facts really matter. The president has also talked about how you weren't allowed to own a cannon or certain types of firearms when the Second Amendment was ratified. That is also not true. And so when it comes to issues of actually getting things done, there are certain things that the federal government just cannot do. And, when it comes to accusing Republicans of being pro-kid killer, it's a non-starter completely. When the president doesn't know the difference between a 9mm handgun round and what the definition of an assault rifle is, that's also a problem. Also, there's a big difference between what the media has been saying, what people in Washington, D.C. are saying, and what the rest of the country thinks. A YouGov poll came out just this week showing that actually most people do think that teachers should be armed, that administrators should be armed. This is not a foreign concept. This is happening in places like Utah and Texas and Arizona. This has been done. No one's being forced to do it, but it is a concept that a lot of Americans have embraced as a solution at their local level in their school districts. So it's a complicated issue. The left tends to throw a label on everything and act like there's a one-size-fits-all policy. I think the mental health aspect of it is important, but then we get into issues about veterans not seeking mental health care because they may not be able to exercise their Second Amendment rights. So it's a complicated issue that the president apparently is going out tonight to talk about because he wants to make his voice heard right before he goes to the beach for the weekend, which says the urgency is not that bad.
Greg, it's kind of interesting. In Israel, you don't hear a lot about school shootings there, and I understand that they've hardened the schools. They have one entrance. You go through one entrance. All the teachers are armed, and they don't publicize it. But, there are people in this country who are not even willing to discuss certain aspects of protection that we can all agree on. There is common ground, isn't there?
I think so, but you can't find common ground with people you don't trust. And both sides kind of don't trust each other. I think there's a fairly good reason why people who are strong in the Second Amendment don't trust the other side, because the other side's wrong on every variable. When, like you said, Biden's been around a long time, and the guy is so ignorant and insulting when it comes to talking about guns. You cannot take him seriously. The reason why he sticks to one variable is that's the only one he can handle. I don't know what kind of Biden you're going to get tonight, because I don't know what's left of him, to be honest, right? He said somebody's pulling his strings. If I were a mass killer, I'd go to a gun-free zone. That's the first thing I would do, right? Because the amount of death is mitigated by the second gun arriving. That's the science, right? So to your statistic, it's true. Most Americans favor their teachers having guns. I favor it. I don't know why we would think that teachers can't handle it unless they're on TikTok. If the